We were talking about like different relationships and how it's kind of changed us and everything like that. And since I have you here, you being newly married, the question for you now is what has changed you in the last 4 years of being with Shanice? What, like, if you had to pick one thing, and I'm pretty sure that's hard, but what is one thing that's changed you in the last 4 years? Because
Changed about me or changed me?
change about you since being with your wife.
Um, I've had to break a lot of old habits. Um, and that I think is the toughest thing. Especially when you're older, right? When you're older, I'm like full transparency. I turned 38 right before the wedding. Um, you know, and Tay, the only person in the world that's older but younger than me. Um, you know, so I turned 38 before the wedding. So we've been together since I was about 33 years old. Going on to 34 because we got together in February of 21. Um, but when you're 30 something years old, it is very hard to break a lot of habits that you've been living with and doing for a very, very long time. It is very hard to change a lot of things about yourself that you believe are right, or that you've been told are right, or made yourself believe are the correct way to do things. Or it's just like famous fairy but that's how I do it. I remember one of our first arguments, and I say the word argument because that's what it was. We went to the laundromat. She was doing laundry, and I went to go help her fold. And I fold in a very specific way, and she folds very much in the retail way. Um, so I'm over here folding stuff, and she's over here looking at me like, "Why are you folding things?" Like, no, that's not how you do it. You got to do it like this. And I'm like, "Well, what's wrong with this? Like, there's nothing. It's folded." And she's like, "Well, I can't see the logo of the shirt. I don't know what shirt this is. I don't know what this is. I can't see it. So if I'm going into the drawer, I don't know what this is." And I was like, "Okay, but that doesn't matter. You just open it up and see what it is." And when I look back on it now, it's such an insignificant thing to argue about. You're muted, Tay.
But still, those are the arguments most couples get into.
Right.
It's not usually like knockdown, drag out over like core, like it's little things like that that mean a lot. But God.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where instead of me being willing to listen and be like, okay, there's a different way to do this, it was more of like, well, why are you telling me to change something that's effective? And I think that's the hardest thing for people to understand, especially men. Just because something is effective, or just because something works, it accomplishes the goal, doesn't mean that A, it's the only way to accomplish the goal, or B, the best way to accomplish the goal. um, a lot of different people can do things a different way. Um, Heck, even something so small as eating a plate in a specific way, right? Some people will eat their starch first and then their vegetable and leave their protein to last. Some people, myself, some people used to joke with me like, "You eat like you've been in jail," because I eat my protein first. I kill my protein first, and then I'll have everything else. Um, but just because she eats, if we had a plate of rice, beans, vegetables, and chicken, just because she eats her rice and beans first, then her vegetables, then her chicken, and I eat my chicken, then my rice and beans, then my vegetables last, that doesn't mean that either one of us are right or wrong in the way that we do the thing. It both accomplishes the same goal. We cleared our plates.
Right.
But it's different strokes for different folks. And when you get married, you do have to be able to come to some sort of compromise about how things are going to be done for
Us.
because it's no longer, well, I do things this way and you do things that way. If you go through your entire relationship or your marriage with I do things this way and you do things that way, you're just two single people in a long-term relationship.
Hey.
um
two single roommates.
right. And
Wasting each other's time.
when you want to build a successful marriage, it's about understanding that there are going to be things that are going to change. And one of the things that's what's hardest for me, and I still struggle with it, even being married, is rectifying the fact that just because something is going to change doesn't mean that the way you did it was wrong.
That's right.
It's just, okay, this is a more effective way. Well, this is a different way. Uh, I grew up, I never had a dishwasher in my life.
You were the dishwasher.
Right. I was the dishwasher. And yes, I used to do so many chores in my mother's house. My dad used to call me Cinderfella. But she's had the luxury and the privilege of having a dishwasher. She's washed dishes by hand, of course. But when we would load in the dishwasher, it was like, well, there's a right way to do it, a wrong way to do it. And I'm like, well, babe, I'm loading the dishwasher. She's like, no, babe, you do it differently, right? Or very big on the utensils go a specific way. This goes in a specific place. This goes here. This goes there. One of the biggest things I had to learn, and it's because I was wrong. This is when I was wrong. I was not explicitly taught growing up. My mother said that was the way to do it, but she never explicitly taught it. My mother was the one who taught me primarily how to cook. My mother and my grandmother on my father's side. So that's why when I started dating Shanice, I was able to impress her by cooking for her at my house, because we started dating still during somewhat part of lockdown. I was not aware that in Latin, Black, and Caribbean culture, cleaning chicken means more than just running it under hot water. So it was like, babe, did you clean the chicken? And I was like, yeah, I cleaned the chicken. I rinsed it under the hot water, took the little silver skins off, and, I cooked it. Okay, but did you wash it? And I was like, but she said, yes, I washed it. And it was this whole big thing to come and find out. You're supposed to take vinegar and lemon juice or lime juice, put it in a bowl, put the chicken in the bowl, wash the chicken, rinse it out, and then you cook it. And I'm sitting here like, well, no, that's not how you do it. I've been cooking chicken for 20-something years, and nobody ever told me I was doing something wrong. So what do you mean? And so I had to make a decision, right? Like, do I want to have this fight? And do I want to have this, I'm right because I want to be right? And excuse my language, I just want to swing my dick around.
Oh.
And be like, this is what it is. Or do I want to learn something new? And that was something that I had to learn. Because it was either that or just don't cook. I'm not going to cook for my wife because she's not going to trust me to prepare the food in a way that she's going to feel comfortable with. So those are the things I think anybody learns. Those are the biggest things that I've had to learn, right? That I've had to become more receptive to new things. There's also a lot of cultural things, right? Cuisine wise, I grew up eating a lot of red meat, a lot of this, a lot of that, a lot of unhealthy carbs and starches and stuff like that, versus not necessarily being the way that she grew up in her cuisine pal. She does eat, red meat. She does eat this. She does eat that. She does eat all those things. But like for me, I'm a big ground beef guy. She's more of a ground turkey girl. She will have ground beef, but she would prefer ground turkey. And so I remember there was that fight of well, I want this and you want that. And it was like, you just have to become a lot more amenable to things. And understand that things are going to change, and it's not worth it, right? It's just not worth a fight to have to go through those things. And if you're trying to, in today's world, our culture and our society, everybody wants to stand on business. Got to learn when standing on business is to your advantage, and when standing on business is just detrimental for the fact that you just want to stand on business and be heard. And like I said, a lot of people just want to, swing their what's around. A lot of people want to have a sword fight, women included. A lot of people just want to have a sword fight. And You can definitely have a winner.
Homie Zorro, motherfucker.
Right. You know, but you can either have a sword fight and have a winner and a loser, and understand that because you have to make that distinction, you are creating detrimental damage to your relationship in the long term, or you can learn the most important word in any relationship, and that's just compromise. Right? There's no winners and no losers. It's just saying like, hey, okay, cool, we do it this way. Okay, cool, we do it that way. Because when you have children, right, and you see this a lot of times, when you have children, what's the messaging your children are going to get? Oh, I do this with dad, but I do this with mom. Oh, I do this with this person, but I do that with this person. Right. And so now you're raising a child that, especially if you're living under one roof, you're not divorced, you are a family. Now it's like, well, I got different rules for dad, different rules for mom. And now you raise a child that becomes combative because you raise a child that's like, well, I want to do this, and this parent doesn't let me do this. So now you have a child picking favorites, creating an unhealthy dynamic in the home. And so it's about creating that one set messaging. It's like, hey, this is what we do. This is what we do. This is what I did. This is what you did. But what do we do in the present and then moving forward?
That's right. That's right. I
So,
love that. Actually, that was a very mature, very very detailed and amazing take on, a newly married person. I mean, I got married super young. I was 23. So the insight that I have now, you know, I, my core values haven't really changed,
Mhm.
but the way in which I know more about myself has.
Mhm.
And like you said, it's like compromise is a really important thing, but you can't confuse compromise with compatibility, because sometimes people try to compromise themselves out of incompatible situations. Of course, that's not where you are in this, because you guys wouldn't have been married. You get what
right.
I'm saying? But I do think compromise is a good word. I do think that you can't compromise, like me and Dre were talking about before you jumped on. It's like when you compromise so much that you lose sense of self, that is betrayal to both the relationship and to you.